This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation announced that there is no evidence that the incident at the Virginia Tech campus was a terrorist act. However, the investigation is not ruling anything out. The incident in which 33 people were killed is the bloodiest incident in the history of American universities. Mona Shikaki has the details.
The shooting incident that took place at the Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg on Tuesday led to the killing of more than 30 students, including Arab students. Rima Samaha was a freshman who was attending a French language class when she was killed. Rima liked to dance and performed the Debke dance. The last images of her were in this video, which was recorded a day before the incident. Her friend Siwar Bizra has not yet been able to get over the shock of the loss of Rima.
عملنا دبكة لفيروز وهي كتير بتحب فيروز، بتحب كل شيء على لبنان فيروز وبتحب الدبكة ورقص وهي
We performed a Debka dance to the music of Fayrouz. She really loves Fayrouz. She loves everything about Lebanon, Fayrouz. She likes Debka and dancing. She taught us all how to dance Debka. We performed a dance in front of everyone. We had a lot of fun. She was very, very happy. Her last day was very good. We finished. It went very well. I said bye to her, and I told her how much I loved her. It was very weird, how much I love her as my friend. She is my best friend. This morning we heard what happened.
She's my best friend. This morning سمعت شو صار.
Jamal Barghouti, who is a civil engineering student, was the only person who was able to video the Norris building while it was being raided by police.
Blacksburg is known to be really safe. We don't have any problems. Usually, we leave our cars unlocked. We leave the doors of our homes unlocked. Then we see this thing happen. It's very horrific. We were very shocked and very saddened.
The incident in Blacksburg was the deadliest incident of its kind in the history of the United States. Last week, there was a bomb threat on the university campus, which resulted in the cancellation of many classes. After the first gunfire incident at 7 a.m. in the morning, the university did not cancel any classes. Many students criticized the university administration for this.
The students believe that the university failed them and criticize the university for this. The administration has 2 hours. The administration had 2 hours. It should have sent an email to the students telling them not to come to class because someone was killed at 7:15 a.m. So it should not have allowed students to come to classes.
No one yet knows the reasons behind this horrific crime in this calm city, and we may never know their true reasons. However, Samaha's friends will always remember her as she was on her last day, before she was killed, dancing Debka with joy and happiness.
Blacksburg, Virginia.
We open with a massacre on the Virginia Tech campus in the United States. Just minutes ago, the police identified the gunman as 23-year-old South Korean student Cho Seung-hui. The shooting, the deadliest rampage in U.S. history, yesterday left 32 victims dead, including an Israeli professor, 75-year-old Liviu Librescu, apparently one of the heroes of the tragedy. IBA's Erin Viner brings us that story.
The shooting rampage at the Virginia Tech University sparked worldwide shock, including here in Israel, as word spread of the death of Israeli professor Liviu Librescu. One of the 3 Israeli students on campus, Asa El Arad, told Army Radio today that the 75-year-old professor of mechanics and engineering was shot by the gunman as Librescu barricaded the door to his classroom in an effort to protect his students. According to Arad, quote, all of the students lived because of him. The Romanian-born Holocaust survivor immigrated to Israel in 1978 and following a sabbatical remained at Virginia Tech. The killing began at dawn yesterday morning when 2 students were shot to death in their high-rise dormitory. 2 hours later, the shooting resumed at the Norris Hall Engineering Building. Witnesses described the gunman as a young Asian male dressed as, quote, a Boy Scout, wearing a short-sleeved tan shirt and a black ammunition vest. He is believed to have been carrying at least 2 pistols and multiple ammunition clips. The shooter killed 32 students and faculty members, wounding some 26 others.
She had a bullet wound that went into her stomach, filleted her liver, and went out the other side. She was in intermediate French. Whenever the shooter came in, she said he fired approximately 5 to 6 clips, around 3 bullets into each person in the classroom.
Was he shooting for specific people?
He was just shooting to kill everyone, apparently.
The violence ended when the gunman committed suicide with a shot to his own head. Virginia police are still reluctant to confirm that he acted alone.
We are trying to determine whether the 2 incidents are connected. Part of that will be the ballistics test that we are having done.
Many students are critical of the way authorities handled the rampage. There were no public address warnings or closure of the campus where 26,000 students attend classes. The only notification of a gunman on campus was sent by email 2 hours after the shooting began.
I was actually shocked, and I don't want to downgrade Virginia Tech. I know it's a big decision when something like this happens. A lot of people, have to decide what to do. But when the shooting happens, I kind of think, the school would go on lockdown automatically, especially if you don't have the killer.
U.S. President George W. Bush said that he was horrified by the shooting and offered his condolences to the families of the victims.
Laura and I and many across our nation are praying for the victims and their families and all the members of the university community who have been devastated by this terrible tragedy.
While struggling to cope with the loss and shock of yesterday's violence, students held a candlelight vigil in honor of those who lost their lives. Erin Viner, IBA News.
Israel Television's Gili Shemtov was in Ra'anana today, a short time ago, at the home of the slain professor's son. She heard how he described the tragic killing of his father.
I heard yesterday from our mother that when the incident started, that he was at school teaching, and the building that he was working at was attacked. And with time, at 4 o'clock in the morning, we heard the news that he's one of the victims. And
the details from the incident?
The details, as I said, are just what people are saying and what we've heard. We don't know that for sure, but there are people that say that he protected the door so it wouldn't open, and he was shot through the door.
And what kind of man was he?
Man that was dedicated really to the university, to studying, to teaching, to the academia, to my mom and to his children. That was his entire life.
And meanwhile, in Gaza City, dozens of Palestinian journalists today held a rally calling for the release of kidnapped BBC journalist Alan Johnston, who was hijacked by gunmen in Gaza on March 12th. Outside the parliament, scuffles broke out between protesters and Palestinian security forces. Several of the journalists at the rally were reportedly roughed up and hit with rifle butts by other Palestinians. A report today in the London-based Asharq al-Awsat claimed that Johnston's kidnappers are demanding $5 million for his release. The report contradicts claims made yesterday by a previously unknown group calling itself the Brigades of Tawhid and Jihad that Johnston had been killed. The BBC issued a statement saying they could not confirm those reports.
Journalists held a demonstration outside the headquarters of the Yemeni Journalists Guild in Sana'a in solidarity with our colleague Sami Al-Haj, who has been held in Guantanamo Bay and who has been on a hunger strike for the past 100 days. The Yemeni Journalist Guild spokesman demanded the release of our colleague Sami and said that his continued detention is a blatant human rights violation. The spokesman also expressed concern about the health of our colleague Sami, who is still on a hunger strike.
وقد نظم العاملون في مكتب قناة الجزيرة
Al Jazeera staff in Khartoum organized a strike in solidarity with Sami al-Hajj. Sudani journalists, human rights and civil organizations participated in the strike and demanded that the Sudanese government intensify its efforts for the release of Sami al-Hajj.
في السياق نفسه نظم عشرات من الصحفيين والناشطين في مجال حقوق الإنسان في
Human rights activists in Mauritania held a strike in solidarity with Sami al-Hajj and demanded that the Arab governments intervene to secure the release of al-Hajj, who has been on a hunger strike for the past 100 days.
100 يوم.
Joining us from London is Zachary Katz-Nelson, one of Sami al-Hajj's lawyers.
أهلا بك زيد بيلسون. نسألك أولا عن
Welcome, Mr. Nelson. Let us ask you first about the most recent visit to our colleague Sami. What is the latest news about his health condition?
وصلكم عن وضعه الصحي.
So, lawyers from Reprieve, my colleague Clive Stafford Smith, saw Sami al-Hajj about a month ago.
My colleague Clifford Stafford Smith saw him last month. I will see him next Saturday. Today he continues his hunger strike. He suffers from health problems. His vision and hearing have started to weaken. He is very weak and fragile. In fact, the last time I saw him, he had difficulty standing up in addition to other problems.
صعوبة في الوقوف ويعاني من صعوبات جمة.
نعم. هل قدمتم أي طلبات خاصة بصحته؟
Have you requested that he be transferred to a hospital, and what kind of reactions did you receive?
Sami is being taken from the hospital back and forth
يؤخذ من المستشفى إلى زنزانته وبالعكس حسب حالته يوما بيوم.
Sami has been taken from his cell to the hospital several times, back and forth, depending on his daily condition. Most of the time he's force-fed inside his cell, not in the hospital. Regrettably, he hasn't been treated any better in the hospital. In many cases, he was actually treated worse than in prison. Sometimes his feet are tied with chains to his bed, and sometimes both of his feet and legs are tied to a chair so he can be force-fed. Therefore, Sami prefers to stay in prison rather than going to the hospital.
Mr. Nelson, isn't forceful feeding, which has been used against many detainees in Guantanamo Bay, including our colleague Sami al-Hajj, in violation to international treaties?
There's no question that was
لا شك في أن ما يحصل لسامي وعلى الأقل
There is no question that what is happening to Sami and at least 12 others completely violates international law and human rights. Forceful feeding and tying the detainees' heads, hands and feet to chairs with chains also violates the doctor's oath. Doctors make vows not to do anything to their patients without their consent.
القانون الدولي الإنساني وحقوق الإنسان ويتناقض أيضا مع مواثيق الأطباء، وأيضا الأطباء يقسمون على أن يقوموا بكل ما يريده المريض وفقا لإرادته فحسب.
With the participation of the Emirates Media Institution and more than 400 Arab journalists and media activists, Jordan's Prime Minister Maruf Bakhit addressed the 4th annual Arab Media Forum meeting in the Jordanian capital Amman. The conference, which is expected to last 3 days, seeks to evaluate the role played by the Arab media during the war. Bakhit urged Arab media outlets to exercise impartiality and transparency in order to help world peace and coexistence and help combat extremism and terrorism. In order to work in an independent and free environment, Arab media must convey the truth and refute any false allegations claimed by combatant forces in the battlefield.
A group of Arab intellectuals, politicians, and scholars gathered in the Jordanian capital Amman to discuss the role of media in an era of war. The conference, which was sponsored by the Arab Press Forum, seeks to promote media development around the world.
During the past 5 years, the Arab nation has gone through difficult times. It went through bad conditions and witnessed many fierce wars. During this period, the Arab media has played an important role in media development, thank God. We gathered today to evaluate the roles played by the Arab media in an era of war.
After years of domination by Western media in the field of news production, some Arab media outlets emerged and captured what many of these Western journalists failed to convey, which is the truth and nothing but the truth. While Arab media is trying to do its best, a struggle between good and evil continues to widen in various regions of the world.
Nowadays, I think that the media is an important force that could make a difference in the outcome of a war. Therefore, we have to make sure that the Arab media covers the news in a professional manner, especially during times of war. The Arab media must report the news with a great deal of courage, impartiality, honesty, and fairness. It must also make sure that its news is accurate and not opinionated. Otherwise, it is useless and a waste of time.
In its 4th annual meeting, the Arab Media Forum seeks to strengthen the role of a free and independent Arab media in an era of war. Arab media can report news freely as long as it is not related to security issues, which are looked upon as red tape.
There are many restrictions in this profession. One of the greatest problems facing Arab journalists who report national news is the issue of patriotism. They need to balance between conveying the truth in a professional way and the issue of patriotism.
The national problems facing the Arabs remain the most important news for Arab media outlets. The Arab media in an era of war was the topic of discussion in this 4th annual press forum that is underway in the Jordanian capital. Showdowns at the political and military levels have escalated into full-fledged wars in several Arab countries, including Palestine, Iraq, and Lebanon. Also, a silent war of information broke out among various news, media, and satellite outlets. As wars continue to rip through many parts of the Arab world, Arab media tried to cover news directly from the battlefield. Amidst the flesh and blood of torn bodies, courageous Arab journalists tried to produce and report news at its best, with a great deal of impartiality and fairness. Arab journalists who wrote history about the ugly face of aggression used the weapon of cameras to break world silence.
أعلنت الجمعية العراقية للدفاع عن حقوق الصحفيين.
The Iraqi Journalist Guild announced that 18 journalists were killed and 19 others were arrested in the month of March. According to the Guild, a number of newspapers' headquarters were raided and other journalists were kidnapped over the last 3 months. The Iraqi Interior Ministry also reported that the number of people killed in the month of March is larger by 226 than the number of people killed in February. This comes while the Enforcing the Rule of Law security plan is being implemented in Baghdad.
الهجمات الدموية والعنف الطائفي الذي يطحن العراق أودى بحياة ما يقارب من 1900 مدني عراقي خلال آذار مارس الماضي.
The bloody attacks and sectarian violence that have devastated Iraq killed 1,900 Iraqi civilians in the month of March. Many of them were killed in a series of explosions that took place in Baghdad, Khalis, Diyala, Tal Afar, and Ninawa. The statements that were released by the Interior Ministry showed that the number of people killed in the month of March is 226 more than the number of people killed in February. The escalation of violence comes as the security plan, dubbed Enforcing the Rule of Law, is being implemented in Baghdad. The goal of this plan is to decrease the amount of violence, which victimizes tens of people every day. Although most of the violence that took place in the month of March was outside Baghdad, the Iraqi capital and the areas around it still witnessed a lot of violence. Official numbers released by the Iraqi government indicated that 165 police officers and 44 Iraqi soldiers were killed in March of 2007. More than 80 American soldiers were killed in the same month.
جنديا عراقيا لقوا حتفهم خلال شهر آذار 2007. أما عدد القتلى الأمريكيين في نفس الشهر فقد بلغ أكثر من 80 جنديا أمريكيا. يأتي هذا في وقت ما زال.
Meanwhile, journalists continue to be assassinated and arrested. The Iraqi Journalists Guild released its report for the first quarter of 2007 with a list of violations that were committed against journalists. 18 journalists were killed and 19 others were arrested, while many others were subjected to kidnapping, killing, physical assaults, harassment, raids, and forceful migration. Many Iraqi journalists were forced to migrate to other areas in and outside Iraq, and some live in extremely difficult conditions. As usual, the perpetrators of these crimes are unknown, and the Iraqi security forces did not open investigations into crimes against journalists.
جدا في حين سجلت تلك الجرائم ضد مجهولين كالعادة، ولم يتم فتح أي تحقيق من قبل القوات الأمنية في تلك الجرائم التي طالت الصحفيين.
The Anbar tribes formed the Awakening of Anbar Committee, or Sahwat al-Anbar, to confirm the alliance between the tribes and the government, aimed at securing stability in the area and realizing the aims of a united national government. More details from reporter Ilham Shakir.
صحوة الأنبار بتعريف بسيط هي تكاتف للعشائر العراقية ذات الأغلبية السنية في المحافظة والسبب المباشر
Sahwat al-Anbar, or the Awakening of Anbar, simply defined, is an alliance between the primarily Sunni Iraqi tribes in the district. The main purpose of this alliance is to counter certain armed groups who took control of the district and most of the mainly Sunni areas like Diyala, Salah ad-Din, Samara, and other areas in Baghdad. These armed groups changed the security system into something resembling complete anarchy in different areas of Iraq. They almost ripped the country apart, blocking any governmental or public security services from getting to the areas under their control. Al-Sahwa appeared in the beginning of 2006, paralleling the National Reconciliation Project that was envisioned by Nouri al-Maliki, the Iraqi Prime Minister, a project with the purpose of uniting the divided and waking them up from a bitter reality that can only be saved with change. This is what brought al-Maliki to Al-Anbar district, where he met with elders and prominent figures of the city. Governmental support was provided for the movement, and hundreds of the city's inhabitants volunteered to join the army and the police in a battle announced by Al-Sahwa. The battle starts in the Anbar and northern districts, and the hope is to reach other districts.
Set a good example in bravery and battle and struggle. Do not kill the elderly, the women, the children, the solitary, or the uninvolved. Do not cut a tree and do not demolish a home.
We salute the heroic spirit of the people of Anbar.
Sattar Aburisha is one of the elders or sheikhs of the district of Anbar and the president of the Sahwat al-Iraq, or the Awakening of Iraq Committee. What is referred to as Al-Sahwa started under his leadership. The cheering of Sattar Aburisha's name by the volunteers led some people to express their fear that the Sahwa phenomenon might change into a way of seeking revenge from the authorities and by exchanging one form of domination with another. But Aburisha dismissed the importance of these fears for what he considers to be more noble causes.
We want security for the country, and we do not want anything but security and stability for our kin.
The tribes under the umbrella of Sahwat al-Anbar confirmed that there is a marriage between government support and the success of their goals. They also said that the success of these goals is intrinsically tied to attempts at national reconciliation.
إلهام شاكر، قناة السومرية.
Moving on to Iraq, a series of attacks struck the country as the leader of a Sunni insurgent group urged other Al-Qaeda-affiliated organizations to put aside their differences following reports of tensions between factions fighting U.S. forces and Shiite militia. Meanwhile, a U.S. Marine went on trial in Rome, accused of voluntarily killing an Italian intelligence agent in Iraq in March 2005.
Gunmen killed at least 6 people, including a senior policeman, in a series of attacks in Iraq. A police brigadier general and his 2 bodyguards were shot dead when gunmen attacked them near his residence in the Al-Thawra district of Mosul. The high-ranking official was not immediately identified. The attack occurred despite a security crackdown in Mosul launched by Iraqi and U.S. security forces early this month to rein in growing insurgents' violence in Iraq's 3rd largest city. A leader from the Jubur tribe was shot dead by gunmen, west of the northern oil city of Kirkuk. In another attack, gunmen killed a professor at the Islamic Sciences University of Baghdad, Muhammad Ali Hamza, in the Saidiya district in the southwestern part of the Iraqi capital. South of Baghdad, also a gunman killed a barber outside his shop. Meanwhile, the leader of a Sunni insurgent group in Iraq has urged other Al-Qaeda-affiliated organizations to put aside their differences following reports of tensions between factions fighting U.S. forces and Shiite militia. The head of the Islamic State in Iraq, Abu Umar al-Baghdadi, said in a website commentary posted on an Islamic website that it was wrong to kill any other Muslim unless they were apostates. The Islamic Army, in a long website commentary, condemned the activities of the Iraqi branch of Al-Qaeda, which controls the Islamic State in Iraq. The Islamic Army, formed by members of the former Ba'athist ruling regime of executed President Saddam Hussein, made a highly conditional offer in October 2006 to negotiate with the U.S. military while ruling out any contact with the U.S.-backed Iraqi authorities. In another development, a U.S. Marine went on trial in Rome today, accused of voluntarily killing an Italian intelligence agent in Iraq in March 2005. But Mario Lozano was being prosecuted in absentia because Washington has ruled out handing him over. The U.S. military exonerated Lozano in the so-called friendly fire case, a finding that has never been accepted by the Italian government. The incident occurred near Baghdad airport shortly after Calipari obtained the release of journalist Giuliano Sgerna after she spent a month in captivity in Iraq.
At least 13 people were killed in Iraq in a series of shootings and bombings Tuesday. In one attack, gunmen killed a professor at Baghdad's Islamic Sciences University. 2 people, including a child, were killed and 1 wounded in clashes between a joint team of Iraqi and U.S. forces and insurgents in the capital. 1 person was killed and 4 were wounded in a mortar attack in the Al-Amariya district. In Mosul, a police brigadier general and his 2 bodyguards were shot dead when gunmen attacked them near his residence. Also today, a car bomb exploded in Hawaji, west of Kirkuk, killing 2 and wounding another 6. 4 were killed and 7 others wounded in other attacks across Iraq. And in Afghanistan, a roadside bomb hit a UN convoy in southern Afghanistan's main city on Tuesday, killing 4 Nepalese guards and an Afghan driver. The attack was deadliest for the world body in Afghanistan since the Taliban's ouster in 2001. The victims of the Kandahar attack were traveling in a UN convoy through the city when the blast hit their vehicle. The UN confirmed the death of 4 of its workers along with an Afghan driver, but said there was no immediate claim of responsibility. Also today, an old artillery shell exploded outside a school compound in the western city of Herat, killing 4 children and wounding 5 others. The attack was reacted by the UN, condemning the violence as an inhuman act.
Also in Herat, as you may know, there was an explosion this morning at a school. Again, it appears to be a pressure plate detonation of some kind. 4 children, we are told, have been killed, 4 others wounded. It's completely senseless, again, with both these incidents, these do appear to be intentional attacks on civilians. That is a clear violation of international humanitarian law. Our intention is that those who were responsible for these acts should be brought to proper account.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.